Good afternoon, folks. I want to thank you all so much for being here. We have one more of our panelists who's going to be hopping on in just a second, but we want to make sure that we stick to our pretty tight timeline with this. So I'm going to actually pass things over to my friend, Jean Vidoni. Jean is on our board of directors at United Way of Bucks County, but she is also the president and CEO of Penn Community Bank, which is the largest mutual financial institution based in southeastern Pennsylvania. She inspires her dynamic and dedicated team to fulfill the bank's mission to act as a catalyst for growth in every community that it serves. She's active in our community. She serves on various boards. Certainly as an employer in Bucks County, she understands why we need to be united in support of working women and the importance of childcare to the private sector. So Jean, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off, and we'll jump right into our event today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Marissa. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. Yes, at Penn Community Bank, our goal is to stand by the community in our name, and we strive to make unparalleled contributions to the communities we serve. And that does mean acting as a catalyst for growth and helping businesses and families thrive. A key part of that is identifying the barriers that prevent growth. And right now, there is a significant barrier that's preventing women from participating in the workforce. That barrier is childcare. When women can't access affordable, reliable, quality childcare, they can't get to work. And that impacts their families, their employers, and our entire community. The female labor force is currently at its lowest rate in over 30 years. Even lower than it was during the Great Recession. And COVID had a large impact on this. When schools and childcare providers closed, many mothers left work to care for their children. Not all have been able to return to work. By spring 2021, nearly 15% of all women ages 25 to 44 were not working due to problems with childcare, versus 2% of similar aged men. There is no doubt that financially, the pandemic disproportionately impacted women. And among women, those who were hit hardest work at low and moderate wage essential jobs. Working from home is not an option. That makes childcare a necessity, and it makes lack of safe, affordable childcare a crisis. As a business leader, I want women and families to thrive. When a parent is dealing with unreliable childcare, they struggle to be physically and mentally present at work. When they know that their child is safe, they can focus. They can succeed at work. It makes it easier for them to get ahead. We are all connected. We all have a stake in building a healthy and prosperous community, which means we all have a stake in helping women get to work so our economy can fully recover. We need business leaders and policymakers pulling in the same direction. We need vocal advocates to stand up and say, this has to happen. That's the only way we'll be able to stabilize the childcare sector and in turn support women, families, and our community. Now it's my pleasure to welcome back Marissa, President and CEO of United Way of Bucks County, and a mom who has experienced this childcare crisis firsthand. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jean. I appreciate that. And yes, we were talking a little bit before we all hopped on today. It's challenging for, I think, universally for working women. So I'm really happy to be here. We're partnering today with the nonprofit organization ReadyNation. Today, they are releasing a new report entitled Female Labor Force Participation is Key to Pennsylvania's Economic Recovery, which I think says it all. Also with us are our friends from United Way of Pennsylvania. Some of you may know United Way of Bucks County works to advance the greater good, and we focus on three issues: access to quality education, financial stability, and good health. These are the building blocks of a great life. Having access to affordable, high-quality childcare is critical to us advancing that mission. It's especially critical for our moms who are in the ALICE population. And if that's not an acronym you've heard before, it stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed. ALICE families are disproportionately headed by women who work in service jobs. A lot of times that means retail, it means hospitality. Those were jobs that were remarkably hard hit during the pandemic. They're also jobs that are not conducive to working from home. According to a March 2021 survey by United Way of Pennsylvania, close to 60% of our ALICE families had to reduce their work hours or leave their jobs completely to accommodate childcare needs during the pandemic. So for these families, it's important to note that childcare is typically the household's greatest expense. It accounts for about 21% or so of what the ALICE household survival budget includes. And that's 3 times higher than the affordability threshold established by the United States Department of Health and Human Services. I can tell you that from my personal perspective, when both of my kids were in childcare, it was far and away our household's largest expense, nearly double what our mortgage is. Now that we have just one child in a child care center, it still is our household's most significant expense. So for me, that's why today's conversation is so important. This impacts all working families. And for Pennsylvania's economy to rebound and thrive, we need to be supporting the needs of working families. It's my pleasure to introduce today's panel. We're going to have a great conversation about this topic today. So I'm going to give you just the high-level bios, and then we're going to get into some of the questions. First with us today, Valerie Hamilton. She's the owner and director of Children of God Educational Services. Her program provides care and education for school-aged and preschool children. One of the things we love about Valerie is how passionate she is about education, how hard she works to engage the whole community, children and their families. She works hard to engage partners to provide early intervention, support, enrichment. She works with students who are at risk. She works with students sometimes who are in need of emotional support and trauma-informed care. She does an incredible job. So thank you to Valerie for being with us today. Also with us, business owner Tiffany Thomas Smith Esquire, owner and partner of the Thomas Smith Firm, a family law firm in Newtown. She's a community leader. She serves as the chair of the diversity committee for both the Bucks County Bar Association as well as United Way of Bucks County's Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee, and is the proud mother of 2 Pennsbury High School graduates. Candy Guerrero has worked in education in the nonprofit sector for almost 2 decades and is currently director of education at United Way of Bucks County. Candy has a master's degree in education. She previously worked as a teacher. And she's the mom of 3 school-aged children. So she knows all about juggling the challenges of parenting and working. She's been doing it for years. Our friend Maribel Flores is proud mother of 2, one of whom is currently in pre-K and the other in elementary school. Along with her role of parenting 2 young children, she juggles working as a school bus driver in Philadelphia and supporting and caring for a disabled adult brother and elderly relative. My friend Latasha is here today. Latasha is a hardworking military veteran who continuously strives to advance her career in the public sector. She has years of experience with childcare as a mother of 3, and her youngest is currently in pre-K. And Latasha, it's good to see you again. We haven't seen each other, I think, face-to-face since pre-COVID. But one of the things I love about Latasha is that she always thinks about the balance between, I think, the education her child gets in pre-K, but also that social emotional piece, understanding how important it is to be in that setting. And finally, Erica, I'm so grateful she could be here today. She's the proud mother of 2 young children, 1 in pre-K, 1 in elementary school. She works in the healthcare industry. And believe me, she understands the challenges of balancing a career and childcare. So jumping into our conversation today, I want to start by kind of framing the issues And to me, they kind of distill into three main categories. And first is this: COVID-19 impacted many people's employment, but it disproportionately impacted women's ability to work. Second, I think it's fair to say that access to quality childcare is essential to women being able to work, women in particular. And finally, if we want to provide access to childcare and ensure that women can get to work, businesses and policymakers need to work together to give working moms and childcare centers the resources that they need. So I'm going to kick things off, really looking at that first point, women being disproportionately impacted during COVID. And there was a statistic in the ReadyNation report that I found really interesting, which is that by spring of 2021, nearly 15% of women between ages 25 and 44 were not working due to problems with childcare, as compared to 2% of men in that age bracket. I thought it might be helpful to get a little bit of perspective from one of our parents who has a young child. So I'm going to ask Latasha to start things off. And Latasha, I have a two-part question for you. And I guess my first question is, does it surprise you to hear that 15% of women were still struggling with childcare issues, even in spring of 2021? And how does that fit with your experience and with what you're seeing in your community? So are you surprised, and how does that fit with what you're seeing, Latasha?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. Is that correct? Okay, for me, I'm currently not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. And I would say, far as why I'm not surprised, is due to the fact that I have younger children. Before I worked at WIC, so I've seen a lot of mothers have to choose between going to work, paying childcare, or paying additional bills. Even though I am prior military, it is very costly to put your child into a daycare or school or before or after care, because most jobs want you there at a certain time. And then when you get there, you have to leave at a certain time. And schools are not set up that way, because you have early dismissal, you have inclement weather, and some jobs are not that understanding, especially because we're back in the building after COVID. They are really not that understanding due to the fact that it's a lot of work that needs to be caught up on due to us not having to be in the building. And schools not being at full capacity and opening fully due to COVID. So I'm not shocked. And I hope, meetings like this will help change the gap far as extended hours or more hours or lower cost for people who have to put their child in daycare due to work.
Thanks, Latasha. That's really good perspective. And I feel like that's a good natural transition into this other side of things, which is, what the experience is like on the childcare provider side. Recent reports tell us that the childcare sector itself is having its own staffing crisis, right? So parents are struggling to get to work, but childcare centers are also struggling with staff. And part of the reason is that nationwide, 1 in 6 childcare teachers left the field entirely during COVID, and that makes a huge difference. In Pennsylvania, this is resulting in classroom closures and even program closures, and that leads to a wait list. So we currently have about 25,000 children in Pennsylvania on childcare wait lists. That's a lot. So I'm going to direct my next question to Valerie. So Valerie is an employer, a business owner, and a childcare provider. I'd like to hear from you, Valerie, about your experience with the staffing crisis in the childcare sector, what the impact is, and what you're seeing right now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for allowing me to share a little bit of our story and what's going on. The staffing crisis is real for everyone, and I acknowledge that. But in childcare, where typically incomes were very low, minimum wage And the expectation of degrees, meaning we expect our teachers to have associates, bachelor's, or even master's degrees, but they're getting paid approximately $12 to $13 an hour for those degrees. And it's challenging to find any individual willing to serve and love on someone else's child at that cost. They do it because they want to, because they're amazing and they love other people. So the need right now is we're going up against large companies, and there's nothing wrong with these huge corporations and things offering incentives and sign-on bonuses, $500 to $1,000, and they're paying $17 an hour, where traditionally those large companies and corporations were paying the $8 an hour. And so for our teachers to have an option at making $17 an hour, either stocking shelves or doing something that requires less interaction with different personality, different challenges within the classroom, it's more enticing, thus increasing like the issues we're having with staffing our centers. No one is going to work in childcare for money. It has to be for love. So I can offer teachers $25, $30 an hour. That's not going to get it. I actually need someone who wants to be there, and then figure out different incentives to encourage them to stay. And that's where the challenge has been. What is that beautiful gray area, because it doesn't have to be black and white, it can be gray, to make a teacher feel appreciated and valued and respected in an industry that typically is not, but we want them to know that high quality comes at a cost, and we're willing to pay the cost, but we just have to all work together. Thank you.
Valerie, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I can't stress enough that, these issues are so interconnected. Valerie's center needs to be successful so that the parents of the students she serves can get to work and be successful in their jobs. An interesting note is that, even prior, and it's certainly more challenging now, but even prior to the pandemic, the U.S. Chamber Foundation estimated that gaps in Pennsylvania's child care system were costing our state's economy about $3.5 billion with a B dollars annually. So as Valerie mentioned, it's even, challenging then, more challenging now. Female labor force participation, as Jean mentioned at the start, is at its lowest rate since 1988, even lower than during the Great Recession. So I want to hear about this a little bit from the perspective of a business owner in a totally different sector. So I'm going to go to Tiffany for this one. As a business owner, you're an employer, you're a community leader. I want you to talk to me a little bit about what happens if we don't figure out how to stabilize and strengthen our childcare sector. What's the impact on working women? What's the impact on their potential or prospective employers if we don't work on this, Tiffany?
So I will say this. I will absolutely say that it's not a matter of should we find stability with regard to childcare for women. We must. We have to prioritize it. We have to prioritize families and children in this environment as we do in every environment. And you and I have discussed this. This issue of the importance of childcare and being supportive of families transcends COVID. This is a pre-COVID issue. And I grew up with this as my mother was a principal in a childcare. And this is back in 1970s, 1980s. So this is an education for young children, providing stability in their day, providing support to parents that are working, addressing issues of food shortage, language difficulties in blended families or families from other countries. These are all issues that have existed and will continue to exist, and we just need to prioritize how we can do it. So, as a result of COVID, I call it kind of the COVID dichotomy. That is, we want people to go out and work, but they can't go out and work. We want children to be in school, but they can't be in school without some kind of restrictions. So this dichotomy is something that we absolutely have to face on. I think that COVID has been the most impactful example of the need for childcare, for modern day childcare. We just need to figure out how to do it better. And so from my perspective, I sit in a very different place than some of these other women because my children are on the other side of this. They're in college now, so they're impacted in a different way. But for mothers of young children, they don't have the ability to care for themselves. So we do need to take into consideration the cost of childcare. And we do need to look at, from our legislative perspective and our policymakers, how to make this affordable so people can be incentivized to go to work, because we all know that educating a woman, educating a child changes the community for the better. So from the perspective of where I sit as an employer, one of the things that I've always prioritized in my business is being flexible and being family-centered and operating from a family-first perspective. And there is a very interesting study, when you look at all aspects of the workforce. As an attorney, there is a study that examines what's called the motherhood penalty, or the motherhood bias. So it's in every aspect of our community. As a mother, not just as a woman, as a mother, we are literally penalized for having children in the workforce. And some examples of that are in the study, which was done at University of Chicago, and it's also been incorporated into Harvard Business Journals, and the American Bar Association's done a study on it. So the authors of the original study are Sherry Correll and Stefan Bernard. And what that study revealed was there were three really interesting takeaways for me. One is that not only are women perceived as being less competent, there was literally a competency rating lower for mothers. So if you get pregnant, your perception in the legal workforce is that you are now less competent than your colleague that hasn't gotten pregnant. Just think about that. Let that sit with you for a moment. The second, and probably more understandable perspective, is that women who are mothers are less likely for promotion because they're perceived as being unavailable. Now, and again, these are just studies and statistics that show that mothers were 6 times less likely than women that didn't have children, and 3.35 times less likely than men who didn't have children to be recommended for hire in the first place or promotion. Mothers are also held to a different standard of punctuality. Being late for work if you have children is perceived as different than being late for work if you don't have children. But that's just factually wrong, but that's the perception and that's the bias. And most importantly, mothers were recommended at a 7.9% lower standard for salary than women that didn't have children. So this is just an example of a study, and this is only in the legal field, but I think that it's something that resonates throughout our experiences. And it's just a reflection of our society, of how we perceive caring for children to not be as important as it needs to be. And we need to change that perspective. So I'm so glad that we're having this panel today. And I'm so glad that we're hearing from women from all different experiences and working together to come up with some solutions for how to improve where we are now and how to take us into the future and prioritize this for working women and families. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. I appreciate that. And I really appreciate in particular how you really look at it very holistically, right? This is, and we have to do that. It's a childcare issue. It's a women's issue. There's a lot of overlap. Looking at strictly the issue of high quality care and education holistically, what I can say is that, childcare in particular sits right in the middle of this Venn diagram of these overlapping circles. Because what we know, and Tiffany touched on this, and her mom, of course, was way ahead of the curve on this. Access to high quality childcare education, it benefits the child, it benefits the family, and it benefits our entire community. And what I'd like to do is go back to some of our moms, parents with young children. And Erica works in healthcare. Maribel works as an essential employee in transportation, working as a school bus driver. And they both have children in high quality programs that are supported by United Way and by Pre-K Counts, which is a publicly funded program. I know that this is probably a very big and broad question, but I would like to hear from each of you, and I'll go to Erica first, and then I'll go to Maribel. I'd like to hear how high quality early education and public support benefits your child, benefits your family, and what you see as the benefit to the community when we help working families. So Erica, would you mind kicking us off with that one?
Absolutely. I mean, as far as being able to, how high quality education benefits my child, or both of my children in general, is that it provides the consistency that they need. I'm not looking for the next person to pick up my child, and because that's basically what I struggled with all last year. They had multiple people picking them up from school or dropping them off or watching them in the morning. I was using care.com to help me with childcare. I was using my neighbors, just anybody that could help me. And it was so difficult and just, like my heart was pounding every time I had to leave my kids with somebody new, because these are people that I knew, but like I wasn't sure if I trusted them with my kids. But like especially for like kids like my daughter having autism, she definitely needs that consistency. They both do, but like her specifically, she has, she has like a routine. She has, she needs that familiar face that she sees every day that she can be comfortable with. As far as it being able to benefit my family as a whole, it allows us, both my husband and I, to be able to have that peace of mind to be able to go out to work and make money, to be able to, put bread on the table, whatever needs to be done, pay the bills and everything like that. And it helps me get to work on time. That's another thing, because it's been absolutely horrifying, like the things that, the stresses that I've had to deal with of not being able to get to work on time and everything like that. My husband has a little more flexibility because he's a route driver, and I think they're a little more lenient with him about getting to work at a specific time. I think he kind of picks his hours almost. And then as far as the community, it helps women get back to work. Having somebody that they can rely on to watch their kids, who's high quality is I think monumental to just being able to, go to work and be able to provide with that peace of mind of knowing that their kids are safe. So that's my take on it.
Thank you so much, Erica. And, of course, we want you at work. we want our healthcare provider. We want the people who are in our emergency rooms to be in our emergency rooms when we need them. So certainly a benefit for the community. Maribel, you also work in a very essential job and also rely on pre-K education and childcare. Same question from your perspective. How does this benefit your child? How does it benefit your family? And what difference does it make in our community?
Thank you for having me. Although I'm not able to go into the particulars of my situation, I now have 2 grandchildren that I'm raising. My grandson, Gabriel, who's 7 years old, and my granddaughter, who is 4 years old and also struggles with autism. Programs such as this have given me the opportunity to continue to work, to provide for my family, to keep my grandkids in a great, loving home without financial worry or constraints. It's also given me the opportunity to relax, to recharge my physical and emotional battery, knowing that I can better care for my grandkids. It's also given me the opportunity to leave my granddaughter in a great, loving environment where I know she's just not being watched. She's actually thriving. Before, my granddaughter went to this daycare, she wasn't talking, she wasn't making eye contact, she wasn't able to communicate. She was really struggling in a lot of areas. My granddaughter now is able to make eye contact. She's saying 2 to 3 words. She follows commands. She's repeating songs that she hears. Because of this school, my granddaughter has been giving, and myself and my family, a community of support. Without the school, we wouldn't have that. Programs like this give us an opportunity to take care of our children and leave them in a great place. When you hear that a child has autism, you kind of lose hope. These programs have given me hope and structure and given my granddaughter stability. And she's in a great place where she's thriving and doing well. Without this help, especially during the pandemic, my family would have suffered. Lacey would not have been in a quality program if it wasn't for programs such as these. Forgive me, I kind of get choked up a little bit when I think about it. I used to worry about what would happen to my granddaughter if we didn't have quality daycare. I felt, anxiety, and I worried about her. Now she's in this program and she's doing extremely well because of people like you guys in United Way and programs who give funding to parents and to programs such as these, where it's just not just a scholarship, it's hope for people who need it. It's generational change. It ensures that my granddaughter is getting a great education. It's also a better future for her for tomorrow. My granddaughter has this because of these programs, and we need this. This is really, really important for parents like myself.
Maribel, thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it. And I think, you really talked about that connection. And I appreciate hearing how it benefits your granddaughter, how it benefits your family. And then of course, the work you do, taking care of the kids you take care of when you're driving is, it's critical to our whole community. And that's why it's so important that public funding is available for the families who need it. Touching on that funding and cost piece for a second, I think it's important to note, if you don't have kids currently in an early ed setting, you may not realize what the costs are for quality care right now. In 30 states and the District of Columbia, the average cost of sending a child to a safe and licensed center is higher than the cost of public college tuition. So the kind of care that we're talking about for Maribel and for Erica and for Latasha and for myself, it's expensive. Context, my daughter is 4 years old. She is in a lovely childcare center and it's over $13,000 a year. And for context, if you think about universities like Williamsburg or Kutztown or East Stroudsburg, it would be less expensive to pay my daughter's college tuition at one of those schools than what I'm paying right now for her childcare. Candy, I'd be curious for your perspective and comment there. You've worked in this field for a while. You've directed work in early education for some time. I want to hear a little bit about how the high costs of childcare impact low and moderate income families, why those high costs are still necessary, and what's the case you would make to policymakers for helping families carry those costs, for ensuring that they can go to high quality centers?
So you heard from our mothers, and many of you have heard from your own experience or have the experience yourself of having young children and the value and the necessity of having those kids in quality care. The stress that comes with it, the anxiety that comes with it is tremendous, as our moms have mentioned. And I think it's unacceptable to have cost as an additional weight on top of that stress and anxiety about putting our kids in care, and the peace of mind that women need and all parents need for having that high quality care and education when they're young. So in Pennsylvania, for example, 82% of families have reported that childcare has been a concern during the COVID-19 pandemic. That's a huge percentage. A lot of that does have to do with the cost. And it's not just for low income families, but moderate income families as well. For many families, including those in Bucks County, the cost of childcare is simply not affordable. Parents have to make a lot of difficult choices about what they provide for their families and whether childcare, high quality childcare, is one of those things. So one of the big concerns with the cost is, as Valerie mentioned before, staffing costs for childcare are not even as high as in many other industries. But to make a budget, many childcare programs are paying low wages to their workers. In order to increase wages, they have to increase the cost of care. And what we're finding, especially recently, is childcare providers are keeping costs down. Many times they're not paying what they would like to pay and what their workers deserve to be paid. And yet, even at those low costs, it's unaffordable for families. And for low-income families, it's usually the greatest expense that they have is childcare. In many families, if there's a low-wage job that one of the parents is struggling to keep, many times they're opting to leave the workforce because it's more affordable to stay home with the child than it is to put the child in high-quality childcare. If your child has special needs and requires therapies and early interventions, that's a really hard choice to make because many times it's very difficult to provide the care and services that the children need at home in a home-based environment. But even moderate income families struggle to make ends meet when they're paying $10,000 to $12,000 per year per child for childcare. So if you have more than one young child, a lot of your income is going to childcare. Many times it's your biggest expense, more than your rent, more than your mortgage. And for single moms, many times it's up to 60 or more than 60% of their income. So as I mentioned earlier, it's simply unacceptable for childcare providers to constantly worry about how they will pay their staff on such tight margins. They worry about what happens if they raise their rates for families. And for parents, it's just an unending cycle of how do we afford this high quality childcare for our family? And if we don't, what are the implications for our children and what are the implications for us as a family? So on the advocacy side and talking with our policymakers about this, I think it's really important to stress what some of you already mentioned, the two-generation benefit of investing in high-quality childcare and preschool. It's two-generational because the parents, in receiving help to pay for childcare, many times are able to continue working. They're able to get financially stable. They're able to pay their bills on time and make better financial decisions. They're able to advance their careers. This leads to economic self-sufficiency. Without that help, many families would slide into financial crisis, many times fall behind with bills, accrue more debt, and it's really, really hard to break that once you get into financial stress that way. The benefits for the children are immense. Children who attend high quality childcare and preschool, they're in educational settings that prepare them to enter kindergarten ready to succeed. So we need to continue to dispel the myth that childcare is a babysitting service where children just go in and they play on devices or they play games and run outside. Children in high quality programs are being educated. The teachers are trained in implementing curriculums that teach them important academic skills, social emotional skills, conflict resolution and problem solving when they're 3 and 4 years old. They're doing amazing work. It's not just care, it's education as well. That means that when the children enter school, they're less likely to repeat a grade because they're more prepared to learn. They're less likely to need special education services because their needs have been addressed early on. They're more likely to graduate high school on time. They're more likely to go on to college or higher paying jobs. So when we talk with our policymakers, we need to stress all of these points. The financial assistance for families is critical, and the future success of these children is critical. The return on investment is humongous, and there is no reason to not invest in high quality pre-K education and childcare at an early age.
Thank you, Candy. I appreciate you putting it in that context. And, I think about that a lot. What do we need our business owners? What do we need our policymakers? What do we need folks to know? And I think that return on investment piece is so incredibly critical. It is huge for us. I think Valerie is probably one of the folks in the best position to talk a little bit about that. But I also, before we go to some closing thoughts, I do want to get a little more perspective from Valerie, expert opinion on this. And, COVID has impacted many people. It's impacted many sectors, many businesses, but it has been particularly hard for childcare providers. Candy talked a little bit about wanting them to understand the return on investment, but I would also like to hear from you. Why has this period of time, why has COVID been so challenging for early education providers, for childcare centers? And, what's that one thing you wish policymakers, it's probably more than one, Valerie, but what's that thing that you wish that policymakers and other business leaders knew about the work that you do?
Absolutely. So COVID was challenging on all levels. And one thing that stood out with our families and our children was mental health. That was illuminated, the issues in our children. COVID was trauma to our families, to our parents. It exacerbated the need of food insecurity, shelter, homelessness, employment for their parents. Their parents didn't know if they were going to have a job, and a lot of parents lost their jobs. So that dealt with children now coming in with high levels of stress. My facility, Children of God, stayed open throughout the entire pandemic. We only closed for one day. We received a waiver through Octal, and I hounded Octal. And the only reason why I stopped them was so I could help my families get back to work. We had a high population of essential personnel, people who were in the medical field, transportation, cashiers, those who needed to go to work, and they were accustomed to coming to my center. So we decided, we meaning my team and I, worked together, had a meeting. Can you do this? Will you help me serve these families? And they all willingly said yes. And we were able to serve them. But while we were serving, we were dealing with children who were highly stressed, demonstrating post-traumatic stress, the issues of not knowing, not being certain about anything. Some of our children lost family members to COVID. How do you handle and deal with that? And not having resources for our special needs students who might have needed more, but they didn't have access to it. So mainly for me, it's that mental health piece, giving access to our parents, our children, our teachers who are like in the fire, in the trenches, giving everything that they know how, but still needing help. Counseling services. So I partner now with Caring University to provide free counseling services for my teachers and our parents. And that was spawned from COVID. We needed something, we needed help. And we know that our legislation, regardless of what aisle they sit on, need to help us in the mental health to be stronger, to have more resources, to build up our families. And then overall, the health, the physical health, not just the mental health, the physical health, and then financially, financial literacy to help with homelessness, credit, things like that, so that our parents can not just work, but work and put their money in the right direction so they can have sustainability and just to help us out in that area. again, as a business on that level, COVID, I had to adjust everything. So that's high levels of constant change to make sure that our product, our center is marketable because we lost so many children. I had 2 centers, I had to close one. How do you remain open? How do you, serve the population? I transport now. I take children home. Candy calls or somebody calls, I'm on the phone, driving a child home or something like that. That's something I didn't do before that I had to do because of COVID to make it work. And it's not just me, it's our other industry, our other program partners, other childcare facilities who are adjusting every single day to make things work, to make the budget. I'm an accountant by original trade. So every single day I'm balancing, okay, I need 2 more kids, I need 1 more kid, I need this, I need that. Every single day, just to make sure that I can A, pay my teachers what I can the most, B, provide the highest quality of care to my parents, and C, make sure that I eat. So it's a challenge, but we all have to work together, start the conversation. And this is a great way, this dialogue of sharing our stories, hopefully moving in the right direction.
Thank you so much, Valerie. I knew, I knew you would be able to give us some really important perspective on this, because this is, without question, this is an area where we need to invest, right, in our centers and our families. Folks, I'm gonna go to each of our panelists for a closing thought, but for those of you who are with us watching today, if you have any specific questions that you would like us to address before we wrap up today, there's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. There should be a couple little speech bubbles and that say Q&A. If you have a specific question you would like the panel to to answer or to discuss, we can certainly do that. We'll have a little bit of time to do that. But now I'm going to go to each person, and this is going to be a tough one because I'm going to ask you to really summarize your thoughts. So I'm going to ask, well, let's frame it out first. We discussed the fact that pandemic hit women very hard. About 1 million mothers left the workforce, and in one survey, we saw that 82% of mothers reported leaving, even though they could not afford to do so. They had to do that. This impacts our economy. It impacts our entire community. And the ReadyNation report concludes that for our economy to stabilize and thrive, access to affordable, quality childcare for working families is a necessity. Business leaders and policymakers must partner to address the childcare crisis and return women to work. To my ears, these are facts, right? This isn't an opinion. These are facts. But I want you each to imagine for a second that you need to convince people that helping working moms with childcare matters. So I'm going to ask each of you to just finish this sentence, just one sentence. We're going to start with Tiffany, and I'm going to ask you to finish the sentence. Tiffany, we must invest in, or excuse me, yeah, you know what, we'll go Tiffany. Tiffany, we must invest in childcare because, what? How do you finish that sentence? Sorry, Tiffany, muted. We had to do it once, right?
I was the one. We must invest in childcare because, as we all know, it takes a village. And the United Way strives to provide that support. We have a shortage of childcare, and that, as we now have heard, has increased stress and had a negative impact on our community because people simply can't go to work. And I'm on this auspicious panel with these essential workers who work in childcare, who work in public transport, who work in emergency medical care, and a woman who has been in military service. And I have never been on a panel that I've been more proud to serve on. So my point is, we must invest in childcare because I'm so proud to be part of this village, and we can support each other. And with that, we can make the change that we need to close this generational gap and improve the lives of families and children in Bucks County.
Thank you, Tiffany. Maribel, I'm going to go to you next. I'm going to ask you to finish this sentence. We must invest in childcare because. How do you finish that sentence?
Why not? Why not? It is the most important thing we will do as a community, as women who work in the workplace. Why not? Our children deserve to have quality daycare, quality school, quality health. Why not?
Love it. Maribel, thank you. Latasha, my friend, I'm going to go to you next. We must invest in childcare because.
We must invest in childcare because we want to continue to have a stable society. If we give good structure in the beginning, we won't have a lot of issues later on in life. Through elementary, people know how to express their emotions and communicate when they feel something is not correct. And then when they get to junior high, they're able to build friendships and figure out career goals. And when they get to high school, they're able to continue to say, hey, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, and be able to figure out, hey, college is for me, college is not for me. And if we can get our children to go to continuing education, college, vocational, military, we can put more back in the community for as taxes, people, it will be a village because we have more people putting in for our taxes, people voting more because they understand and can read and write and participate in things that will affect everyone later in life. So that's why we need to invest in early childcare to help us later on in the future.
Latasha, thank you so much. Thank you. Erica, how do you respond to that? If I ask you to finish the sentence, we must invest in childcare because, what's your perspective?
I think we need to invest in childcare because the kids, they need the direction, they need the consistency, they need that sense of normalcy. And because each and every child is worth the effort, of putting in that extra work to make sure that they have everything that they need.
Erica, thank you so much. Candy, how do you finish the sentence? If you're trying to convince a policymaker or business owner, we must invest in childcare because.
Parents need the financial help, and our children deserve to be in safe, caring, nurturing environments, cared for by qualified teachers, so that their parents can work and provide the stability that all children deserve.
Thank you so much, Candy. And we're going to wrap things up with my friend Valerie. Valerie, finish that sentence for us. I know you heard things that you agree with that you're probably, yes, but let's hear from you.
I'm going to finish with a quote by former Secretary of State Colin Powell. Since his passing of today, I think it's fitting. And everything, all children need a laptop, not a computer, but a human laptop. Moms, dads, grannies, grandpas, aunts, uncles, someone to hold them, read to them, teach them, loved ones who will embrace them and pass on the experience, rituals, and knowledge of 100 previous generations. Loved ones who will pass on the next generation their expectations of them, their hopes, and their dreams. That's what we as childcare providers do in our family's absentia. Thank you.
Valerie, that was perfect. Thank you so much. That was really very meaningful quote. Thank you for selecting it. We don't have any questions in the Q&A, but we do have a couple of comments that I want to share. One of our audience members today is my friend Christina Valdez. She works with Along the Way, which is a very unique service. They provide in-home care for ALICE, so that's asset limited, income constrained, employed, or women who are going to school, sometimes in-home care for hours that are not typically covered by childcare centers. And she mentions that Along the Way has a white paper available on their website for free that you can take a look at about what they're doing to continue to support women who need to get to work, including those who are in non-traditional hours. Our friend Phil mentions that 63% of the households below ALICE or below the ALICE threshold in Bucks County, 63% are single female head of households, which is important to keep in mind. So, you know, the need for quality, reliable childcare is important for all of us. Needs to be affordable for all of us, but particularly for low and moderate income working moms who are single parents. It's literally crucial for those folks to get to work. Seeing no additional public-facing questions or comments, I think we're gonna, we'll wrap up, and we'll kind of wrap up just on time here. So, Jean, do you have any closing thoughts for us?
Oh, thanks, Marissa. I just want to thank you and your team and all of the panelists, as well as the United Way of Pennsylvania and ReadyNation for holding this important conversation today. Looking forward, women's participation in the workplace is not expected to fully rebound until late 2024. I think it's clear that the current state of the Commonwealth's childcare sector is increasingly holding back a full economic recovery of our state and of our country. With the federal proposals and social infrastructure being debated in Washington, D.C. as we speak, it does seem like we have a historic opportunity to fix some of these systemic issues in the childcare sector. By doing so, we can help women get back to work and in turn aid our economy and lay the foundation for our future workforce. So I know I don't have to tell any participants today to use our voices because I think we already did, but it's important to continue this conversation in all the right places so that we don't forget and so that we can collectively make change for our future. So on behalf of Penn Community Bank, I want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jean. And, you know, I want to, again, really thank all the panelists here. To be clear, we are all working moms. We all took some time out and participated in this, and we all have a stake in ensuring that childcare is available, is high quality, is affordable, and is there for women so they can return to work. I mean, I hope you heard some compelling information through the course of our conversation today. But the bottom line here for me is this. If we want our state's economy to recover, we want our communities to thrive, we need action. We need action by state and federal policymakers to help stabilize and strengthen childcare. And we need women to be able to return to work and remain in the workforce. Part of our mission is advocacy. We work with a lot of groups and a lot of individuals to fight for the education and financial stability of every person in every community. And so Jean mentioned, and this could not be more important to me today, I'm asking for you to advocate with us. And really there's two things that we can do. You know, the first is really understand the issue. My colleague Katie dropped into the comments the ReadyNation report that's just released today about the impact of female workforce participation. You can download a copy from the chat. It's available online as well. So familiarize yourself with the issue. I mean, you'll learn things there that I think are very compelling. And the second thing is, as Jean said, make your voice heard. As we speak, our elected officials are looking at solutions, and we want them to know that this is important for all of us, for our entire community. Our United Way, United Ways across the state are all part of the Start Strong PA campaign. And at the end of this session, when you close out, you're going to be directed to a website, Start Strong PA. You can very simply advocate for this. Use your voice, sign on to show our legislators that you support increasing access to quality childcare. And together, when we take action, people listen. It makes a difference. So again, if you have any specific questions, you can certainly contact my team at United Way. I want to thank the moms who were here with us today. And Valerie, of course, Tiffany, of course, business owners in our community, Jean, an employer and great advocate for helping our communities to thrive. And thank you again for everyone who was able to attend with us. Have a great afternoon.
Bye.